Okay, that was short. Derek in Sleepy Hollow, New York.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Bo Russell. Hi, Tracie. How's everything?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks to nobody, because I can't say thanks to God, because no God anyway. So, anyway, listen, I'm just to give you a little story about me. I'm 42 years old. I'm born in Puerto Rico. I'm raised in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is part of the United States, and we got two constitutions. We have the Constitution of Puerto Rico and the Constitution of the United States. But people are very deeply religious. I'm atheist. I'm 42. I've been atheist since I was 14, because when I was looking at the world around me, I was looking at the people, different members of my family and friends that they were, in different versions of Christianity. They were involved, some of them that were Catholics, some of them that were Jehovah's Witnesses, some of them that were Pentecostal, and they were all talking about how great God was, how good it was, to go to be part of the church and everything. But at the same time, they were talking bad about other people. There was too much hypocrisy, especially when they were talking about other religions. And I'm talking about people within Christianity. And that hypocrisy was so sickening that at that young age, at 14, when you're 14, you don't know nothing. I say, this thing can, it can be a God that can, be, can allow, people that they claim to be, believers, people that they really, believe in love your neighbor and everything, allow, something like this to happen. There cannot be no God, I said. So from that point on, I decided to be atheist. Right now, I got a good friend that is Pentecostal.
Derek?
I'm sorry, I'm going to chat. I'm sorry, I don't know you guys were talking. Go ahead.
I just, do you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I got a question. Which way do you guys normally handle people? Like, for example, it's kind of experience that is a question at the same time. How you handle people that they are like devoted Christians, that they said, that they're willing to do whatever God says. God told them, to kill their own son or whatever. How do you guys handle people like that? Because, it's really shocking. I had a Christian tell me that. I told him, what? God told you to kill your own son. Will you kill it? And they told me, yeah. How
it's all right.
Do you guys deal with people like
that? Derek, are you talking about like what would be a counter apologetic to that kind of a position?
Yeah, because
or are you
with my own conclusion?
I'm thinking Euthyphro.
Okay.
I would go at it from like a Euthyphro dilemma. There's something called the Euthyphro dilemma, and what it basically asks is, how do you? It asks a more classical question, but what it's getting at is, how do you know your God is moral? And so with the Christians specifically, what they normally say is that they can't trust their own moral tendencies, but they can trust God's moral tendencies because God is moral, right? That it's like his nature or something. And the question is morality just whatever God tells you to do, or is morality more than that? Because if it's just whatever God says, then there really isn't. Then morality becomes just arbitrary. But if there's actually things that are moral, that you can judge, that you can say this is or isn't moral, then you would have to judge that. And if you believe that God judged it, the question is, how do you know? Since you're not able to trust your own moral gauge, how do you know that the morality that God is handing you is a good one?
I think but I think Derek is asking how they can argue directly with the people who've already said, I trust God so much that I'd kill my own son. And I think this really gets back to your topic of indoctrination, because there are certain people that I don't really think are worth arguing with. And when they're so far indoctrinated that they can't see what's wrong with saying that, I would rather not even try to reason with that person. I would rather just try to make an example of them and draw other people's attention to them and say, wow, look how far gone this guy is. Religious morality warps your sense of actual morality so badly that this guy would be willing to kill his own son.
Yeah, I think if you're online, if you're arguing at a forum, but I think Derek might be talking about family and people that he knows. And
well, do you think they mean it?
I don't know if they mean it or not, but I mean, if push came to shove, maybe they really wouldn't do it, you would hope. But I would just think that trying to get at why they trust this God so much would be the question. Why do you trust this thing that you can't actually gauge whether or not it's moral because you don't trust your own morality? So based on what do you trust this thing,
Yeah. Well, because this is what I said. I just wanted to hear your point of view because it's just I try to use different ways to handle this particular. Because I try this at Christians just to see how deep into their religion they are, to see if I can just put the argument into put it like in corner them. See how the both Christians are. Well, I was telling them because sometimes they tell me, I do what God tells me because the Bible says so. So I tell the people, okay, so do you realize, probably you don't know this, but do you realize that the Bible that you love so much, number one, it's like badly translated, and many of the words in the Bible that doesn't really mean what they say. Number one, and number two, there's not original scrolls of the Bible. There's copies of copies of copies.
Yeah.
So how do you know that that's true?
Right.
You understand? What evidence you got? I tell them, so who knows if you're following the wrong belief? In my opinion, all beliefs are wrong, but, when it comes to religion, but in particular in Christianity, and I even tell them, do you realize that there are 7 billion people in the world, and from all the people who live in the world, only 2 billion are Christians, and that's 5 billion that believe in all the things. So what makes you think that your belief is true, and everybody else is wrong? And then, but in Christianity, there's so many versions of Christianity, so what makes you believe that your version is right and every other Christian is wrong? So I try to tell that. So are you willing to kill your own son based on a belief that might be wrong?
Derek, I just want you to know that you can't always win these arguments one-on-one. I mean, that's something that you have to come to grips with, that you can't necessarily make everybody come around to your way of thinking. You can have the discussions and you can talk to people who are maybe a little bit more susceptible, but I think I don't necessarily advocate sort of the whole agree to disagree approach when it comes to sticking to your principles, but I do say that in your personal relationships with people, there's not always a point in just banging your head on this particular wall to the bitter end.
Well, I don't try to antagonize them or anything. I just say, I try to avoid, I try to keep my friendship and avoid, those arguments. But let's put it this way: if I get attacked, I don't defend myself.
Well, sure.
You understand? That's the way I do it. I don't want to let these people, walk over me because we as atheists, we are constantly under attack.
There's nothing wrong with just being really blunt, and if you get them saying, well, I would kill my son, then you can just say something really direct, like, well, I think that's horrible, and I think that my atheist morality is better than your religious morality. And just leave it at that. I mean, that's kind of outside the realm of something you can reasonably argue with.
Yeah, I told them, my secular morality is superior to your morality because I'm not willing to kill my own son just because of a belief that cannot be confirmed.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so I think we're going to move on.
Okay, no problem. I appreciate that. Maybe I might try to call you guys next week whatever it's hosting and come up with another topic of that. But thanks for your show. I really learned a lot.
Okay,
thanks
for watching.
I really okay. That's fine to let Derek go, but I really don't encourage people to try to think of topics or reasons to call.
Yeah.
If you have a reason to call. If you don't. But please don't
Right, we don't need
Stress
filler
yourself.
topics.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
would like to answer people's real
Yeah.
questions that are actually on their mind.
There are sufficient people who actually have a reason to call, so
Right.
don't strain yourself trying to help us out by thinking of topics.
But thanks for watching.
yeah, absolutely, yes.
Do you want to finish up?
Oh, no. Let's go on.
Okay.
We're having a good time.
All
These
right,
people are
we've
waiting.
got the momentum on the calls
Yeah,
now.
yeah, people
so,
are waiting.